Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for the Outdoor Art Club presentation of Thriving, How to Create a Healthier, Happier, and More Prosperous Life. I'm Jill Sampson, the program chair for today's event, and I'm working with Zoom team members Kate McCormick and Deborah Duck to bring you this program. For those of you who are not familiar with the Outdoor Art Club, we're a nonprofit women's organization founded in 1902. The club engages in civic, cultural, and charitable work in our community. We also host this public speaker series to explore topics of interest to our community. Today's speaker plans to leave some time at the end of his talk for questions, so please enter your questions into the Q&A function. He's looking forward to that presentation. It is my pleasure to introduce Rand Selig, an accomplished hello, Rand, an accomplished entrepreneur, coach, scoutmaster, board member, and roll up your sleeves conservationist. He shares his extensive expertise in this book. With an MBA from Stanford and undergraduate degrees in mathematics and psychology, he excels at managing complex projects globally. He is relentlessly positive and believes he can design his own life and others can too. Rand is based in Mill Valley. He enjoys life's adventures with his wife of 44 years. Welcome so much, Rand. We look forward to your talk.
Oh, thank you very much, Jill. And thank you also to Deborah and Kate for handling all of the technical aspects of the webinar. It's a great pleasure to be here today. My wife, Carol, has been a member of the Outdoor Art Club almost since we first came to Mill Valley 40 years ago. And during that long period of time, we've enjoyed just many terrific outdoor art club events and also some life cycle events. Notably, our daughter's wedding was at the Outdoor Art Club. Before I start talking about Thriving, I want to do a big shout out for this book. It's about the Outdoor Art Club. It's called Ladies to the Rescue. And it is just a tremendous book. I enjoyed it. I really highly recommend it. It really makes a terrific case for the valuable, incredibly important role that the Outdoor Art Club played at the early stages of the Outdoor Art Club and the beginning of Mill Valley. Mill Valley would not be the same today had it not been for that early work. And obviously, the Outdoor Art Club continues to just do great work. Today, I'd like to share with you a number of aspects of thriving, and also include a group of things which I call the 10 keys to aging well. This comes from my book, which Joe mentioned, Thriving, How to Create a Healthier, Happier, and More Prosperous Life. And the primary premise of this book is that we all have enormous power, the power to make choices to get on the path to thriving in our everyday lives. These are choices about how we spend our time, who we spend our time with, what our habits are, and of course, even our feelings. Shakespeare's Hamlet said, "To be or not to be, that is the question." Well, with all due respect to Hamlet and to Shakespeare, I think an even more profound question is how to be and how not to be. And that is really what my book is all about. At the outset today, I'd just like to assure anybody who's a little bit anxious about this that thriving is the average over time. It's the climate, if you will. It's not any given day. It's not, if you're having a bad day, it doesn't mean you're not thriving. It just means that you're not having a great day. You're having maybe a bad day. But on average, you might be thriving. My work on thriving and my book is based on me having consciously designed my own life. And I believe others can too. What does it take to design your own life? Well, You have to do some hard work. You have to know who you are. You have to invest the time to do that. And unfortunately, that's not a one and done kind of proposition. As you change and move on in life, you've got to return to that question. Who am I? What do I stand for? What don't I stand for? You have to become self-aware so that you can get where you need to go, where you want to go. So ask yourself this question. Who's driving your bus? So if you're driving your bus, you're deciding how fast to go, when to stop, when to turn right, when to turn left. Very importantly, who to invite on your bus. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. And also, unfortunately, there may be times when you'll need to invite people off your bus because they're toxic. They're just really not helping you become the person you want to be. I also think another way of saying that is that we can be authors of our own story. Now that I'm a published author, I know what it's like to edit and delete. And this is what we can do with our own histories. And as we look forward, we have the ability as the author to script out different future scenarios for ourselves. We also have the power to make choices about the kind of person that we want to be. Levi Darby once said, "Life is a grindstone. It will grind you down into grains of sand, or it will polish you like a beautiful gem. It all depends on what you're made of." But the good news is that we can change what we're made of, just kind of like neuroplasticity. We've been hearing about that. Well, the same is the case with what we're made of in a sort of psychological way. And that's really what thriving is all about. So let me start off by asking a question. What kind of pirate do you want to be? Slide number 1, please. So Anthony D'Angelo said, treasure your relationships, not your possessions. So that's what a pirate does. They treasure things. So ask yourself that question. For me, it's very simple, and I hope it is for you too. Thanks very much for that slide. Now, let me ask you another question. Do you want to be a Ziggy? You say, well, what is a Ziggy? Well, Zig Ziglar was one of the great motivational coaches of our time. He died about a dozen years ago, but one of his great lines was, slide number 2, please. Live in such a way that if someone spoke badly about you, no one, and I emphasize no one, would believe it. Well, thank you for that slide. Can you imagine being that kind of person? That's terrific. So moving on, as we think about our lives and moving on in life, we can also make choices about what kind of legacy we want to be creating and what kind of legacy we want to live. And I'm not talking about financial. I'm talking about the kind of person that you are. We can redefine success by becoming a certain kind of person and not focus so much on accomplishing things. I believe very strongly that it's much more valuable to carve our names on people's hearts now while we're alive, rather than on a piece of marble on our tombstone when we're gone. So with those thoughts in mind about legacy, what I recommend is that you take some time, write down what's your legacy, what kind of, what you'd like to leave behind. Revise it over time. I've revised my own legacy probably 5 or 6 times in the course of my life. And it just is a very powerful reminder for me to be that person. And I'll be happy to share with you that what I'm trying to live is about four things. One, it's about excellence in everything I do, in the projects I take on and the relationships I have. It's about having purpose all the way to the end. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes. It's about being a voice for encouragement. And it's a voice for being love and acting in that way. And again, that's the topic we'll talk about in a few minutes. Studies have shown that there are 7 personal qualities that lead to life satisfaction and accomplishment. I'm going to review all of those 7 during the course of my talk today, including a number of additional ones about aging well. But for now, I want to just highlight 3 of these. One is zest. Zest is excitement, enthusiasm, energy, and very importantly, minimizing the negative. Second is having grit, which is resilience, persistence, and being mentally tough. And the third is self-control, which is the ability to exercise restraint over ourselves, over our emotions, our desires, our actions, our impulses, especially at difficult times. Now, on an everyday basis, there are elements that have a lot to do with whether we're thriving or not. Let me mention one of those, which is words. Words are very, very powerful. They shape how we feel and they shape our thoughts. So I invite you over the next couple of days, over the next week, just notice what words you're using. Let me give you a couple of examples. Are you saying, I should? Or are you saying, wow, cool, I could? Are you saying, I have to? Or are you saying, I get to, and be grateful for that? Are you saying yes, but, and almost hold up your hand, indicating that maybe you're really not agreeing at all with the first part of somebody's comments? Or are you saying yes, and, which indicates that you are in agreement with what the person said, and you're adding some additional information and thoughts. And the last example I want to share with you is one I particularly enjoy. Are you saying, oh, I'm busy? Or are you saying, I'm delightfully scheduled? So words matter. Use them well. Now, the second example I want to give you of everyday things are things that might be holding you back. I like to hold up a pair of handcuffs because to me, they really exemplify the point I'm trying to make here. So there are things that are holding us back, and we can't just get about what we need to do when we're handcuffed. Well, how do we deal with that? Well, we need to shine a bright light on the things. You have to look inside, shine a bright light on what's going on. What is holding you back? Because once you do that, you can start making choices. You have this enormous power to say, I want to shrink that thing that's holding me back. I want to eliminate that thing that's holding me back. People have told me frequently that one of the things that holds them back are the recurring tape recordings, the voices they've heard in their head, often for decades. They may have heard these when they were very little from their mother or their father, maybe from a teacher, a boss, maybe even from a spouse. And some of these voices are fantastic. They're full of love and encouragement, but other voices don't reflect who you are or who you want to be. And those voices you need to really work hard to just stop listening to. To be truly thriving requires, I believe, to be flourishing in 4 different domains. Let me walk us through what those 4 are. The first is thriving personally. That actually represents half of my book because it's so foundational. Thriving personally includes having character, having a beautiful, loving relationship with ourselves, managing our money well, making great choices about our emotions, having gratitude. And there are quite a number of other ones, including defining success on our terms and deciding what enough truly means. The second part of thriving is to be thriving with others. So this is section 2 of my book, and it's about building relationships with friends, family, maybe coworkers, partners. And I also have a chapter in my book about leadership and management. And people often use those words interchangeably, but they are very different. They're different roles, and they require almost different personalities to carry them out well. Part 3 of thriving is thriving out in the world. And section 3 of my book has chapters on making really important and good decisions about Mother Earth, about taking care of our environment, and also about being of service, being charitable and philanthropic. You know, a few days ago, we celebrated Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. And one of his great lines was, "Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others?" And that gets us to part 4. And that is to be thriving by moving ever forward in life. This is the 4th section of my book, which is about gaining wisdom and evolving as a person. Hemingway said, "There is nothing noble in being superior to your former self. True nobility is being superior." I'm sorry, I messed that up. Hemingway said, "There's nothing noble in being superior to your fellow man or woman. True nobility is being superior to your former self." Now, I make the point at the end of my book that thriving in all of these 4 aspects is possible. It's a real possibility, but, and there's a big proviso, only if we're willing to hold the reins, only if we're willing to take responsibility. President Franklin Roosevelt said, "To reach a port, we must set sail. Sail, not tide anchor, not drift." Well, people often ask me why I wrote this book and who it's for. Well, I wrote it to encourage and inspire people. And I'm very happy to report that the feedback has been enormously positive. The book has over 200 5-star reviews. And last year, I was invited to be a guest on over 60 podcasts. And I gave many TV and radio interviews, as well as quite a number of in-person talks. My book is for people in all stages of life. I've spoken to high school students all the way through to people in retirement homes. I've talked to people about launching their careers and transitions of all kinds, changing jobs, getting into and out of relationships, retiring. And I recommend they use the word rewirement. It's so much more important because it opens up the possibility of yet another chapter in your life. Now, I want to move on to the 10 keys to aging well. Hank Thompson, the musician, said, "The older the violin, the sweeter the music." So I'm going to be talking about this from a psychological standpoint. I'm not going to be talking about physical things you need to do or nutritional things or how to sleep better. We all age, but we don't all age well. Aging well is about vitality. It's not about longevity. So as I go through these 10, I recommend that you write them down and then check yourself out. Are you doing really well? Are you doing just okay? Or is this an area where you would help yourself by working on it? So, aging well. Key number one is be positive. Be positive. This is a choice. All of these 10 are choices we can make. Research has shown us that by being positive, you add 8 to 9 years to your life. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be a happier life. Now, we're surrounded on all sides by people who are cynical and pessimistic, many who are angry and fearful. And of course, that's all the media is, just a constant stream of that kind of stuff. So instead, I say we should follow Nelson Mandela when he says, may your choices reflect your hopes, not your fears. Key number 2, have purpose. Have purpose. Well, I think it's really hard to feel fulfilled, and maybe even for some of us to get out of bed in the morning if we don't have purpose. Mark Twain said, the 2 most important days of your life are the day you were born and the day you discover why. And actually, I think there may be more than one day you discover why, because your why may change over time. Key number 3 is to be grateful. Be grateful. I must say that I feel grateful every day for so many things, but including living in fantastic Mill Valley. Wow. Wow. What a great decision Carol and I made to move here so many years ago. Yeah, but even if things are not going well, you can be grateful. How does that happen? Well, you could say to yourself, it could have been a lot worse. Or look at the support I got when I went through that difficulty. Or look how I stood up with some strength, with some courage. These are things that help us to be grateful. And I love the line that says, the struggle ends when gratitude begins. Key number 4, be curious. Be curious. Well, why is being curious so important? It's actually one of those 7 that I mentioned about personal qualities leading to life satisfaction. Well, being curious, as it turns out, makes life enjoyable. Think about a trip or an adventure you took. What made it enjoyable? It could have been that it was because you were hearing different accents or even different languages. Maybe you were eating different food, or you were watching people who are dressed differently. Being curious is part of being a lifelong learner, which is really, really important because we change over time and the world around us is changing. So being a lifelong learner allows us, helps us to keep current and be on top of things. Now, there's an initial bonus to being curious, and that has to do with conflict resolution. Now, think of a situation where you're in a conversation with somebody, maybe they're a friend, and they start talking about something, and you're trying not to shake your head no, but what they're saying just seems really weird to you, maybe wacko. And so, how do you handle that? Well, what I'm suggesting is use your curiosity. Actually, use that word. Hey, I'm curious. How did you come up with that? And don't say feeble, weird, stupid idea. So, how did you come up with that idea or that feeling? And then listen to them and ask them questions about it. You don't need to rebut. You don't need to disagree. Just listen. And by doing it that way, You will preserve the relationship. You won't do damage to it. You'll learn more about this other person, which also could be very helpful to you. Key number 5 is to have humor. Have humor. Now, besides telling jokes or puns, which I'm somewhat famous for, I'm talking about 2 kinds of humor. Humor about the situation, about things that maybe we don't have much control over. Imagine that you're driving down the street and there is the construction going on again. Well, you could be very frustrated and angry, kind of trying to get somewhere, and you're looking at your watch. But it's out of your control, and you could say to yourself, ha ha, there those guys go again during rush hour or just at the time when I need to get going fast. Now, the second kind of humor is humor about yourself. You say, well, you watch yourself and you go, ha ha, Rand, there you go again. It just helps to lighten things up, maybe at a time when you really need to lighten up. Now, the next 3 keys, keys 6, 7, and 8, are all part of social intelligence. And social intelligence boils down to having an ability to communicate, to form relationships, and to balance between empathy and assertiveness. But specifically, there's an element of social intelligence that deals with being emotionally healthy, which is very key to aging well. So the first of these 3, which is key number 6, is stop self-sabotaging. Stop self-sabotaging. Self-sabotaging is when we don't even let ourselves get into the game. We don't volunteer for something. We don't apply for a position. We don't accept an invitation to have a coffee with some new person because we think, oh, they really are just trying to be nice. They don't really have an interest in forming a relationship with me. This is not something that I've experienced in my own personal life for me, but it is something that I saw when I was in college as a math major, and I was also a tutor. And students would come in for tutoring assistance, and with a minute they would say, "I'm not good at math." So we'd work through some problems together, and eventually they could solve some problems on their own. And they would say, "Oh, math is cool. I love math." So in a very short period of time, they went from self-sabotaging, "I'm not good at math," to enjoying something. And that's a possibility. I say that even if there's only in your mind a 1 in 100 chance of something good coming out of it, why not take it? Key number 7 is forgiving. Forgiving. Now, one part of forgiving is forgiving others. I think all of us have had the experience where at some time or another, something happened where we felt insulted. We felt some injury. We felt that we should have had an apology and we didn't get it. So what do you do about that? Well, I think one of the things to do is be honest. You have to say to yourself, did I play some role in this? Maybe it's a small little element to what happened, but I contributed to it. And even if the person is not with us anymore, not in your life, not on the planet, what I recommend is that you write a letter. Obviously, you don't mail it, but you write the letter saying, here's what happened. Here's how I felt. I felt you owed me an apology and I didn't get it, but I'm forgiving you. This is really akin to taking a giant stone out of your backpack and throwing it out. It'll allow you to get on the path of thriving with a little bit more brisk step. Very important. The second type of forgiving is forgiving yourself. I've yet to meet a person who wouldn't admit that they have made a mistake or weren't the best person at one point or another. So You have to forgive yourself. Again, be honest. You have to sort out and unpack what really happened, but then forgive yourself and turn those mistakes into valuable lessons. The third of these keys to aging well is to let go. To let go. Now, this of these three emotionally healthy things to do was the hardest for me because I felt that I was controlling so much of my life and so much of my investment banking career. Oh, control. But then, with the help of Carol and my terrific two adult children, I began realizing that actually what I controlled was not as much as I thought I was controlling. It boils down to me controlling four things. One, I control my attitude. Secondly, I control the amount of effort I'm willing to put into something. Third, I can control my behavior and I can control my actions. With other people, I'm not in control of that. The most I can hope for is that I have influence over them. And if I handle myself well, my influence grows. If I don't handle myself well, my influence will diminish. So I like to do a little exercise, which has to do with letting go. And we can do it together if you like. So hold up your fist. You're holding on to something you'd like to let go, but you haven't been able to. You're holding on to it really strongly. You actually can see your white knuckles if you're looking down. Okay, then turn your fist over, still white knuckles. You're holding on, but you'd like to let go. And then you're powerful. You decide, I'm going to let go. I joke. Maybe you read Rand's book. And then you open your hand, you wiggle your fingers, you wiggle your thumb, and almost magically your hand rises because you've let go of something that was very heavy. So that moves us to key number 9, having friends of all ages. Having friends of all ages. Well, I think most people have friends about their age, their own chronological age, maybe plus or minus 5 years. And that's completely understandable. But you can give yourself an enormous gift by having friends who are half your age, maybe in their 20s or 30s, even, or maybe somebody who's 15 or 20 years older than you are. Why? Well, what happens is that they're seeing life very differently. They could be speaking different kinds of language. Even they could be more adept at certain things, social media or technology or you name it. So that's an enriching thing, and you can also serve as a mentor and share your experiences for people who are younger. And it's a kindness when you're listening to somebody who's older as well to allow them to tell their story. So having friends of all ages is very key. I saw this up close and personally with my father, who died last year peacefully in his sleep at age 102. And I would talk to him and he would just say, hey, just had a visit or a phone call with a friend. And he would describe this friend. And I was amazed. Here's this person who really, truly is a friend who's 40 years old. Or until dad, was in his late 80s, they were older than he was. This is amazing. It was a great gift that my dad gave me, and I appreciate it. In addition, if all of your friends are your age and now you're getting a lot older and they're all going away, I don't think you want to be the last person standing. It's very lonely. And that gets me to aging well, key number 10. Be love. Be love. Well, in our society, love is really considered a romantic thing. Hollywood does a great job of that. There are That's what Valentine's is about, with chocolates and roses. And if you have that in your life, I'm delighted. I'm very grateful that I do have it in my life. But being love is something bigger. It's not a private thing like that kind of love is. It's a public good. It includes how we act with everyone and everything. It includes being kind, being respectful, listening hard and listening again, asking questions, of course, performing acts of loving kindness to others, to animals, and to Mother Nature. Just remember, everyone has their story, and we all want to be seen and appreciated. And very importantly, smile. Smile. It may be the most important thing you wear every day. As Mother Teresa said, the smile is the beginning of love. And if you need just one more reason to smile, studies have found that it is physiologically impossible to smile and be angry at the same time. So next time you find yourself being angry, just start smiling. Now, as we're just at the beginning of a new year, let me end with this. Next poster, please. So this is the last quote in my book. My book has many, many quotes in it. My readers are saying they love them because they're so well positioned to amplify a point I'm trying to make. So this quote, I'll read it. Could this coming year be the best year of your life thus far? So ponder that. Ponder that. And when you're ready, then go to the next question. What would it take for this to be so? Thanks for that slide. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this talk about thriving and aging well. If you liked it, I would just encourage you to pick up a copy of my book. And I also have 3 calls to action. First is, if you like the book, please write a review and post it on Amazon or Goodreads. New reviews keep a book fresh. Secondly, consider making a gift of my book, maybe to a family member or friend, or maybe even a coworker. And third, I'd be absolutely delighted to give a talk, maybe at your book club or a living room group, or certainly at a larger venue. And you can connect with me on my book website, www.randselig.com. There's a page there that says Connect with Rand. So thanks very much. And now let's open it up to Q&A.
Hi, thank you so much. We have several questions. And I just want to let everyone know that if you go to the chat function, you can get all the information on how to reach Rand. And if you have any more questions, please put them in the Q&A so we can ask. So the first one is, how did you personally get on the path to thriving?
Yeah, I have to admit that I've been very fortunate. I've had a really good life. I started off as a little guy, a 2-3-year-old, smiling and singing. And strangely enough, that's exactly how my own son was, coming down the hallway with a hat on and pushing a little rolling thing, and just a very happy guy. So I wake up, I sleep well, and my day looking out the window at beautiful Mill Valley is great. I've worked very hard, but I also know how to play hard. I told the kids when they were growing up, you want to play hard and you want to work hard, you want to play hard, then you should work first.
Okay, the next question is there 1 or 2 specific things that you do to help you stay on course designing your own life?
Yeah. That's a really important question, and the answer to that is that I mentioned in my talk that it's really important to be self-aware, that you really need to know who you are. That without that, you can go sideways, and before you know it, you're not thriving. But if you become self-aware, then there's much more chance of you going in the direction you want. Well, how do you become self-aware? Well, that that's an internal look. You have to look internally, and this is just the same thing about how you define success. It's an internal set of things. It's not, the neighbor driving down the road with the fancy car that you don't want and don't need anyway. So what works for me is to journal. Now, I know this isn't something everybody likes to do or wants to do. There's different ways to journal. You can do it with the paper and pen. You can also do it electronically. But whenever I'm conflicted, or whenever I feel like I'm moving off course, then I write it down. And it is just a magical thing, because all of a sudden I can unpack what's going on. Often my confusion or off trackness, if you will, is because there's a jumble of things going on. It's not just one simple little thing. It's a intertwining ball of wax, and I need to sort of break that apart into separate things, and see what role I've played in it, and see what role others have played in it. Once I've done that, then I can map out a strategy to take care of myself, to take care of the situation, to make amends if that's what the appropriate thing is, and to get back on track.
Thank you. Another question. Have you experienced pain, recent personal trials or tribulations, or overcoming addictions?
Well, no, no. Fortunately, I've not had any problems with addiction, but I have overcome in my life many obstacles. I mentioned lost my father last year. He was a towering figure, and the first thing, and I had a difficult relationship with him for much of my adult life, and the first thing, and the continuing waves of feelings I had, was of gratitude. That was a series of choices I made. I had matured to the point where I didn't need to battle with him. I learned to accept him and respect him and appreciate him. So I got through that. I've also had some autoimmune eye issues, and I'm just so grateful to be living at a time when we have great doctors and great medicines that can take care of that. And what stimulates those problems is stress. So, that's just a wake up call for me to say, hey, take care of yourself more, and stop being so stressed out.
Good advice. You mentioned that you've done workshops for students. How do you teach these concepts to students? Do you do it differently than when you're talking to adults?
I did mention that I've had quite a number of engagements with high school students. Last year, one of the great things was I was invited up to Terra Linda High School,
Mhm.
which has a 4-year program on environmental leadership, and I was invited to be part of a Shark Tank. The, in the junior year, the students have to write up a business plan and create a business, and they show up for this presentation. It's a 5-minute presentation, and they have to show up with their prototype of this product that they're going to be making, and it was such a delight. So, I mentioned that one of my legacy items is to be encouraging. And so when I'm talking with high school students, these are 15, 16, 17, maybe 18-year-olds, I'm just reminded they need encouragement. And we all do. We all do. But I think it's especially important then. So when I was a shark, I would start off by saying how much I enjoyed what they said. I would outline 3 or 4 things that I thought they did really well. And then rather than critique, I would say, did you notice X? Or did you notice Y about your presentation? Or do you think the name of your company really tells everybody what it's about? And so by asking questions, I think that I saw them relax. because they weren't sure, whether the shark was going to draw some blood.
That sounds like fun. I love Shark Tank. Um, in these troubling times, politically and what's going on in the world, how do you stay positive and thrive? It's particularly challenging right now.
Yes, it absolutely is. And the answer to that is I'm weaning myself away from the media. I am informed. It's not like I know all the minutia, but again, the media wants to feed us things that are, you know, uh, able for them to build their business to sell. And those messages are not messages I want to hear. I don't want, and so I spend almost no time, maybe 2 minutes a day on the news of the day. That's really helpful. I also engage much more locally. So as Jill, you mentioned when you were introducing me, I've been very involved here in Mill Valley and with boards throughout the Bay Area for decades and decades. That's something I can do and have some sense of impact on. It's not global. It's not solving cancer, but it is adding a little bit, and I'm delighted to do that. It's a reason for it's one of the purposes for my life.
Another question is, how do we start? I mean, you wrote a whole book about it and you've spent years on this, but what are some baby steps to just begin the process?
Well, without making too much of a commercial, I say baby step one is to get a copy of the book. The first couple of chapters really allow you to begin the dive into who you are. They ask questions about, are you introverted or extroverted? And there's a website that I have in the book. You can go there and test yourself. There's a section there talking about adverse childhood experiences. This is such a powerful thing. There's so many people who, before they're age 18, have had one of these 10 things. It's a yes no simple questionnaire where you say, did you ever go to bed hungry? Was your mother or father absent? Was there alcoholism? That kind of thing. And so the importance about that is you again come to grips with who you are and where you came from. What's very interesting to me about this is that people who have more than four or more adverse childhood experiences have an 85% chance of having lifelong mental or physical problems.
Mm.
Well, as it turns out, that people with adverse childhood experiences, ACE, can be either a dandelion and they will spring up in a crack in the sidewalk without any water, or they will be orchids and a slight puff of wind and they would fall over. We still don't understand entirely what produces the dandelion or the orchid. I'm a dandelion. My sister is an orchid. So go figure.
Um, so how do we mirror this for our children and our grandchildren? I mean, what maybe lessons from how you handled it with your children or grandchildren?
Yeah. Well, one of the happiest things that happened to me last year is I got a love letter from my granddaughter, who's 7. I'm almost getting teared up about it right now. Um, so sometimes a distance, a little bit of age difference really helps. I think we've all heard about that. That's a lot easier to be the grandparent than it is to be the parent. But in fact, several of my friends have said, "Hey, we want your little tutorial on how to be a great grandfather, not a great grandfather, a super duper good grandfather." And I'm very delighted to talk about that. It's paying attention. It's just being with them on the floor, asking the question, challenging them at times, but not in a, overwhelming kind of way. Like, do you know how to spell this? Or, what, after you get to 102, what's the next number? Those kinds of things that are kind of fun, just make it fun. Um, but also learning opportunities. As it relates to your own children, that's a spicier meatball. I think all of us are very well intentioned. I don't know too many, this is my little bubble of a life, but I don't know too many parents who say, oh, I don't care about kids. I'm going to be as tough and as mean as I possibly can. I don't think very many people are like that. But how you conduct yourself is tricky. And of course, how you were raised and the modeling you had to come to the place where you're now a parent, even if your children are adult children, is can be very tempting. So I continue to press myself to evolve, to be a better listener, to be more patient, and I open the possibility that my children can be my teachers. And there are times when I have to swallow and take a deep breath because, wow, what they're saying to me feels, if I listen to it, Wayne, not very complimentary. But on the other hand, I think they're coming to these points with love and with maybe a concern, and so I listen to that, and I thank them.
Great. Another question is, do you offer one-on-one coaching and mentorship guidance?
Oh, I appreciate that question. Um, I am investigating what the next steps are for me with thriving. It is, as I mentioned, extraordinarily important and powerful. Coming up, I've got 10 more podcasts in the next weeks. But what I really want to do is roll up the food chain. I want to do keynote talks, and I want to do workshops, which may be 3 hour or multiple day workshops. So I'm investigating how to do that. But this isn't about making money for me. I do want to help people. I want to encourage people. But the one on one scenario, I'm not a licensed therapist. I do have a degree in psychology, but this is the one on one is something I've stayed away from. I'm happy to answer a question if somebody wants to connect with me on my website and throw a question. And if they're here in Mill Valley, I'm more than happy to have a cup of coffee. But the deep dive into that discussion is something for at least the time being, I'm going to say no to.
Okay. The last question is, orchids might feel bad because they aren't dandelions. How do you help them? And some people aren't naturally as positive as others.
Yeah, these are really true, and I do very much appreciate that we're all different in lots of different ways, and so I don't in any way mean for my comments to say, "Hey, this is so cinchy. Just decide to do this and off you go." What I've laid out is a sort of a compass, if you will, of possibilities. It's the hard work is actually putting it in place. It's the implementing of these things that is something that's a very individual kind of thing. Um, orchids, or I don't know. It could be biochemical kind of thing as opposed to the dandelion. Why at age 3 was I a happy fellow? Why was my son singing walking down the hallway in the morning? These things I don't really completely understand, so I just take it as just immensely grateful for having this. I've worked hard. I'm very dedicated to making the world around me a better place. But it's not as if I don't make mistakes, and it's not as if there aren't lots of things for me to still work on and to learn.
So are there any final comments you'd like to make? Because maybe there were questions that didn't get asked that you want to leave us with.
Well, I just want to suggest that if people are interested in this whole topic, you can just Google me. There's the 60 podcasts I mentioned are there on Google, and they're nicely laid out. So you can just say, oh, this is a kind of a more business-like conversation in this podcast, and this one's much more about emotional stuff. So you can pick and choose if you like podcasts. I do on my website list about a dozen. I haven't refreshed that in quite some time, but they're good ones there too. So you can just pick and choose through those. And I will. My primary social media is LinkedIn, and I will be making some posts about upcoming or past podcasts. As I mentioned, there are quite a number coming up in the next few weeks. One in particular I'm very excited about. I was just invited yesterday. There's an organization that deals with nonprofits and clergy, and they realize they need some of the stuff I'm talking about. They need to sort of reorient and refocus and create some extra energy in their organizations and their religious communities. And this is something I've spent a lot of time thinking about and engaged with. And so that'll be coming up. Um, in a couple of months. And so I'm very excited about that one.
Fantastic. I just want to remind everyone to please look in the chat because there's all kinds of resources on how to reach Rand. And if you have a question that didn't get asked, you can send it to him as well. Thank you so much for this inspiring and informative talk. I know while you were talking, I made a list of things I want to do.
Oh,
And
good.
certainly one of them is to be more curious about asking about people's opinions instead of telling them what I think of their opinion. So super helpful. So
Well,
thank you again.
well,
And
thank you so much, Jill, and your colleagues for inviting me to be part of this webinar, and thanks overall to the Outdoor Art Club. What a terrific, amazing organization that Carol and I love being part of.
well, thank you. And also Rand's book is available at the Mill Valley Library. I went to get it and it was checked out. So they are there. I just want to let everyone know that our next speaker program is Thursday, February 6th at 1. The topic is what gets in the way of people understanding each other better, with the speaker Yael Schonbrunn, who's a clinical psychologist, assistant professor at Brown University, and an author. And you can register for this event by going to the OAC website, which is www.outdoorartclub.org, and click on public events. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope it was as inspiring for all of you as it was for me.